So I don't know, people are starting to come in. We'll just give it another minute or two and then I'll get started. But I'm really excited to be here today and to share with you what I have learned and know about healing and grief just through my own personal experience. So I'm just going to give it another 2 minutes and then I'm going to get started. So just bear with me. Thanks. So welcome to those that are coming into the room. And we're just going to give it another minute or so and let people get oriented and settled in for a minute. It's about 2 minutes after 1, and just want to let people get into the room. So hang on. So, okay, I think I'm going to get started. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here today. A little bit about myself. My name is Ilene Smith, and I'm a trauma healing coach. I've been trained in somatic experiencing, which is a body-based therapeutic modality that was developed by Dr. Peter Levine. I returned to school in my early 40s, and I knew that I wanted to work with trauma and healing. I specialize in working with eating disorders. And just the big idea, just to give you a basic overview, the big idea of somatic experiencing is to help an individual restore their sense of safety after they've been through a traumatic experiencing. And the goal is to start regulating the nervous system and help a person live their life with more ease and vitality and more calmness and greater capacity to navigate adversity. So in my own personal practice, I use a combination of touch work, talk, and movement therapy. I just wrote a book called Moving Beyond Trauma, The Roadmap to Healing from Your Past and Living with Ease and Vitality. And it's available on Amazon. At the moment it's sold out, but it will be available again next Friday. But I'm not here to talk about my work. I'm here to actually share my own personal story with you. And my own personal story of love, loss, and healing. And my hope is that today I can inspire you on your own personal healing journey. I'm assuming that most of you who have come to listen to me talk have had some sort of loss or grief at some point in your life, or maybe just recently. And this is just, it's really interesting that I was asked to do this talk because I just lost my dad a couple of weeks ago, and I'm moving through that process of healing and loss with my mom and my family, and it's been really it's been a really interesting journey. So a little bit about my story and my love story. On June 18th, 2016, I woke up early in the morning, woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I quietly got out of bed. My husband was a very light sleeper, and so I tiptoed into the den, and about 20 minutes later, my husband comes into the den, and in the sweetest way, he just says to me, "Does anyone need a snuggle?" I'm running back into bed. He wraps his body around me, and I fall back to sleep. The alarm goes off about 2 hours later, and I say to my husband, I said, "Oh, that was the best snuggle ever." Just that feeling of being safe in someone's arms. So it was a Saturday morning, and we just went about our morning routine. I had plans to go out with my cycling group for a long bike ride. My husband raced sailboats, and he was in the middle of a regatta, and his boat was winning, and he was all excited. Left the house in the morning, and And I'm about 2 hours into this bike ride. My phone just keeps ringing and ringing. And I just scream out to no one in particular. I was with about 20 people. I said, hey, I got to pull over. Something's going on. Look down at my phone, and there is probably 5 or 6 calls from guys that Bill sailed with, someone from his office. And at that point, I knew that there was a problem. So I call back one of the guys from his sailing team, and it turns out Bill never made it to the boat that morning. I call our apartment, there's no answer. I call him, and at that point I knew that my husband was dead. I then called our doorman. I asked him to go check to see if Bill was up there, and he was up there lying on the bathroom floor, unresponsive. So needless to say, the Uber ride back from Indiana back to Chicago, where we spent our summers, was probably one of the most devastating couple of hours of my life. I knew I was going to get back to my apartment, and there was going to be my husband who was dead. I was in so much shock that I got back to the apartment, and I didn't even recognize half the people that were there, including Bill's ex-wife, who I had a beautiful relationship with. She was, and I couldn't even see straight. The pain, the shock quickly wore off, and the pain set in. But I was very fortunate. I was surrounded by a ton of love and people that really cared about me. So my marriage was challenging. Bill and I certainly had our issues. And I think that in many marriages, what happens is we go into the marriage thinking that the other person is going to heal us and heal all the things in us that feel broken or that need to get resolved. And so when that doesn't happen, we start blaming the other person. And eventually, and it certainly was in my marriage, it was when we both were willing to take responsibility for what we need to heal, things really started to shift. And my work became very clear to me. I had spent many years in therapy trying to resolve this one issue. I had so much fear around losing my parents. And when I got married, all of that fear got projected onto Bill. And so I could say, the quick diagnosis is I had a lot of anxious attachment. So wherever I was most attached to, there's going to be a lot of anxiety. But so my work was really clear. I had to figure out how I was going to build a safe container within myself, no matter where things were in my marriage, whether Bill and I were in a good space, whether we were in a bad space. I had to find that safety within myself. And I think you truly never know what life is preparing you for, because in the aftermath of what happened when Bill died, is that I was able to stay present, and I was able to allow people to really support me. At another point in my life, that wouldn't have been possible. I would have isolated, I would have pushed people away. But I quickly got into this space of Bill and I are still on a journey together. It's just a very different journey than the physical journey that we were taking together. And I was able to get to the space of recognizing that no matter what happens next, I was going to be safe. And that in itself was really powerful for me. So when a tree dies, what happens is its seeds start spreading, and it spreads to create new life. So I think this is like a clear message that we have to remember that where there's death, there's also capacity for more life. We don't have to die with the person, although we may feel like we're going to die. You know, and I often hear people say in the aftermath of a loved one's death, what would that person really want from me? You know, what does so-and-so expect of me? And I would ask a very different question. I would ask the question of, what do I want it to look like now? How do I want to show up in my life? Where is there new opportunity for growth? And I really believe that when someone dies, that the focus, if we can then focus on our own personal growth, things start looking very different. You know, grief is really the final stage of love, right? We learn so much when we're in love. So wouldn't it make sense if grief is that final stage of love? We can't grieve if we didn't love. Then wouldn't it make sense, just the way in the relationship when that person is alive, we have to take responsibility now. We still have to take responsibility for our own healing. And when we do that, I really believe the process of grief begins to shift to healing. You know, it's so easy, right? Just the way it was in my marriage, easy to blame Bill for the things that didn't feel right, or the things that where I felt a void or I felt emptiness. I think the same principle applies in death. We have to take responsibility for what we want it to look like next. And look, is it harder because we don't have the physical presence of that person? Yes, it's definitely more difficult. We don't have that mirror. We have a different opportunity for growth, but it's still there. But just remember, we can't grieve if we didn't love intensely. So if in love we heal, we have to also heal in death. And so it's, in a sense, we want to, we always get into this being grateful for the love and all the things we experience. We also have to be grateful for the hard stuff as well. It's almost like, can we shift our mindset and think of, we always talk about grief, but let's talk about the healing part, because that's the process. The grief isn't a process. It's the healing from the grief that's really the process. And this doesn't mean that we're not going to feel that despair and that it doesn't feel like it'll never end. But I think it's really about recognizing that these intense feelings of despair, they're not sustainable. I think it's about learning how to make peace with that pain. Because if we resist it, we hide from it, we shop it away, we medicate it away, and we try to distract ourselves from it, I promise you it comes back with a vengeance. I remember the day after Bill died. That morning I barely opened my eyes and remembered that the intensity of that pain. It was like, I didn't feel like it would ever go away. But my mantra became, it's gonna get easier, it's gonna get easier. And so maybe day one, it took me 2 seconds to feel that pain after Bill died. Eventually I was able to walk all the way over to the coffee maker without feeling that intense pain. And today, this is 4 years later, there are times when I wake up in the morning, I'm not thinking about it. And I want to be really clear, this is not a betrayal to my relationship with Bill. This is about honoring it, because I have been able to create a life that's really full and really wonderful. So I don't have to live in that pain on a day-to-day basis. I think love and loss always has something to teach us. And the question is, how are we going to choose to receive it, right? Each journey is different. Everyone has a different journey, but fundamentally, there's one universal experience. If we can elevate ourselves during this experience, we become more resilient. And so the question I ask is, do you want to survive this, or is this really my opportunity to thrive and see what I'm made of? It's an opportunity for self-care. It's an opportunity to create more connection with yourself and with other people. For myself, to bring it to even one level deeper, there were lessons and things that I had to learn about myself in the process of Bill's death. For me, I had to get super honest with myself, because there were places in my own marriage and in my relationship with Bill where I really did betray myself. And so in the aftermath of his death, I had to learn, and I had to get honest with myself and own the places that were still broken. And in my marriage, I certainly will say that I tolerated things that I didn't feel were really acceptable to me. And so this can be a whole other talk, but there were things that had to be healed that maybe necessarily couldn't get healed while Bill was alive. Maybe I wasn't courageous enough to heal them while he was alive. And so, like, for me, that big lesson was, that no more compromising myself, and that I need to stand on my own principles, regardless of what the outcome is going to be. And so I believe that sometimes we just can't really get to our truths or own our truths or claim it until the other person is gone. And I just want to say, give yourself that permission. It's okay. So I think that also one of the things that we forget about is that it's self-care, right? This is also an opportunity for your self-care. And it's a time in your life where you got to get really clear about what you want for yourself. What do you need? What's going to work for you? And there's nothing wrong with taking care of ourselves. I think we get into the zone of it's not okay. When I was getting this talk together, for some reason I was like, okay, what's the origin of the word healing? And the origin of the word healing comes from the word hel, which means wholeness. So this is, in the process of death, this is about restoring our sense of safety and a sense of wholeness for ourselves. It's interesting for me, the part of taking care of my physical being was easy. It's always been, exercise and eating well has always been the thing that's helped me stay really regulated and make life more tolerable in those moments when I wasn't able to tolerate my emotions. And to some degree it was an escape, which again could be a whole other talk. But the hard part for me was taking care of myself emotionally. I remember that first year after Bill died, my trauma around Bill's death was so fast. I had no time to prepare. I mean, it was just like someone tapped Bill on the shoulder and said, "Hey, come with me, you're gone." And there's no finality. And the way it sort of presented itself and showed up for me in the aftermath of Bill's death is I could not drop into any of the beautiful memories we had for about a year. I couldn't look at pictures, and it was too intense. And so a lot of what, well, I'm sure some of you have experienced this, in the aftermath of someone's death, people always want to share with you like some beautiful story they had about their memories of this person, which is great, right? It's a beautiful way to celebrate the person. For me, I couldn't even listen to other people tell me their stories. So what it looked like for me is people I'd run into people, they'd want to share a story. I would just say, I have to put my hands up and say, please, I really appreciate that you want to share this story, but I'm not ready to, and not now, maybe at another time. And so I just share this with you. Don't be scared to put your needs first. This is about your survival, and this is about how you want to write the script for your healing. I think this is really a big one. And I'm watching my mom go through this right now with the passing of my dad a couple of weeks ago. Who are we without the physical presence of the person that we've been with for so long? We lose you lose part of your identity. For me, I was no longer Bill's wife. And so that security blanket and that piece of who I'd become was just stripped away from me. And I'm watching my mom go through this. We had a conversation the other night, and she said, my parents have this beautiful network of friends, and they had a beautiful life together. And my mom said, I did everything with your dad. I did all these things socially with him. All of a sudden I have to be with all these people without him. And I just looked at my mom and I said, Mom, this is really an opportunity for you to explore a part of yourself that you might not even know. And while it feels raw, and while you feel like you've lost your security blanket, this is now your time to create a new internal security blanket. And so I think what that lack of presence does is really forces us to see ourselves fully. For myself, I certainly realized this in my own marriage. My husband had a beautiful, big presence. And so a lot of times I kind of hid behind him. And I realized, this is something I had to own, that I didn't show up in the world as fully and as capable as I was. I kind of got lazy, and I hid behind him because he just made it really easy for me, because he was so vibrant and smart and always had something interesting to say. So I just want you to remember that void of the person not being there, I think of it, it's a blank space. It's a blank space for you to now color it any way you want to color it. So I asked this question: who do you want to be when you lose a loved one? Because at some point, you're going to be that person that other people are grieving. So what is it that you want to leave behind as a memory for other people? Excuse me. Oh, finding spaces of joy in the sadness. I think it's really important to remember that sadness and joy can happen side by side. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We often think that if we're sad, we can't find spaces of joy. And joy comes through safe connection and experiences with other. And I remember that first week after Bill died, I was in a sea of love. Like, all of my community and all of my peeps, they showed up for me. I had friends flying in from Seattle, family in from New York. And, and I went between moments of feeling horribly devastated and in that despair to other moments when I was connected with my friends and my family, to being able to drop into funny memories and things and just enjoy that connection that I had with other people. This is, I can't encourage this enough. Your self-care and your connection to other people is everything. And you owe it to yourself to be able to give yourself the space to be able to have that connection and have moments of joy in the midst of all the sadness. I think it's important to remember too that when the other what you focus on is really going to be what you experience. So if you focus on all the loss and all of the deficit around it, that's what you're going to experience. I think one of the things that was a big thing for me is that when Bill died, I started gaining this very intense sense, heightened sense of awareness of the world through Bill's eyes. And even today, I can laugh and say, my God, what I'm saying is exactly what Bill would have said. So we get to experience this person in a whole new way. So I think about, when I talk about this, focusing on what you focus on is what you're going to experience, is I think that we can create success out of death. As much as we don't like that the other person's gone, it's also a fresh start. And so, yes, you need to hold space for the memories, but it doesn't mean that we don't create new ones. And because the relationship that we had is really what's going to form the next chapter if we stay open to it and we allow for it. We can use it. It's a resource. It's a reference point. It's a reference point for the things that we want going forward and the things that we don't want. And both of that's okay. And I think it's almost this notion that we have to make peace with the thing that we wish didn't happen. Right? And if we're going to find gratitude in life, doesn't mean that we get to pick and choose. You have to find gratitude for the pleasure and for the pain, because the pain is there to help us elevate ourselves and move forward in a very different way. I think that we have to think about this as this is so important, right? The loss is going to help us create more connection, right? What we get from that loss is more awareness of other people's loss. right? Which then allows for a different kind of connection. And as I said, it's the way we heal is through connection. And I would just say this, I mean, it's something to really think about, that the cure for grief is connection, right? Connection elsewhere. Because what are we really grieving? We're grieving the loss of connection. So it's not, we're not going to let go of the memories. The memories get to stay with us forever. But what we have to let go of is the expectations of what we had for the future with that person. So I think the big thing is, how do we get there? And I just want to leave you with this one idea. SOAR is an acronym I like to use, and it's safety, owning your own story, attuning to yourself and nurturing yourself, and resources and resilience. And for those of you that are going through grief, I would just highly recommend, just snap a picture of this, because this at the end of the day is the things and the elements and the components that's going to help you move from that grief piece to really being able to find a space for your own healing. And that's about all I've got today. I just, I hope this was helpful for those of you that are grieving or in process or about to lose someone. And at the end of the day, connection is really going to be the most powerful healer for you. So thank you. So I don't know how this works. I think Jesse is in here. And I guess there's Q&As now. Let me just say, okay. So Julia would like to know a little bit more about somatic experience and what that looks like in grief. It's a good question. So somatic experiencing in grief is really about teaching someone actually to be able to move through the experience of the trauma around the grief, and be able to build enough of a safe container within yourself so that you can actually be able to find space to stay connected and to stay present, and to live more in the present. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Okay, oh, let's see, there's more questions. Do you offer personal counseling? I do. You can reach out to me via my website. My website is ilenesmith.com, which is ILENE Smith.com. Be happy to talk to you on a personal note. Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, it doesn't look like there are, so let me see. Oh, hold on. Okay. What do I, one of the participants says, what do I do for fun? A lot of outdoor things and a lot of connection with friends. Okay, I'm not sure of any more questions. I don't see any more questions.
Ilene, it looks like you've got another one in your Q&A.
Oh, another one. I'm trying to.
I know they're coming in through chat.
Okay, yeah. So I'm like, it's, what makes you laugh in a time of grief? Again, it's always been for me about being with friends and being in safe connection with other people. And so it could be the most ridiculous thing, or it can be something even serious and powerful, but conversation. And again, it's that connectivity piece to other people that that's going to help us heal.
Eileen, do you see the one in the Q&A about being more irritable since loss?
Oh, okay. I don't see it. I miss, oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So that, that's again, that's the nervous system. And that makes perfect sense because when we have loss, we don't feel safe. And so what happens when we don't feel safe? We're going to go into our most primitive instincts of whether it's fight, flight, or freeze. And so our systems are going to be agitated. So my recommendation is to start getting curious about the things that are going to feel more soothing to you. But I think it's really important, and our bodies never lie. It's really important to start beginning to find things, whether it's breath work or meditation or things that are going to help you settle your nervous system, because your system is basically telling you, I don't feel safe. And that's what the agitation is. Okay, are there any, I don't see, okay. Okay, Jesse, I don't see any more questions. Are there, do you see any more?
Oh, it looks like you cleaned them all up. Good job.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much.